deal is very simple that we are suffering this pain. You saw this picture. This picture that I put on the screen was actually in Bombay. It's not in some random place. It's in the main roads of Bombay. And here's a small girl picking food from the garbage or close to the garbage bin and eating it. So that was the picture. So that was the picture that I had basically provided. And what I'm saying is this pain and misery of India, of poverty and misgovernance, is totally unnecessary because the whole world has actually reformed itself through sensible ideas. And I will run through them very quickly today. So this conference is about changing India. We don't want this India. We are sick of this India. We are absolutely tired of this misery and poverty and misgovernance. And many reasons, many people probably didn't come simply because there's traffic, there's other issues, and some got caught up in some shopping, etc. Everything takes time in India. So this conference is organized by the India Policy Institute in Hyderabad and the Indian Institute of Public Administration in Delhi. And of course, the hall is hosted by them. And we'll work out how to pay for the costs of other things. The plan was to start at 10 a.m. So I invited the chair to the session, to chair the session, and then there will be an inaugural address. First, before that, I want to just give an introduction to this conference very shortly. Then I'll give a couple of short talks. Now they'll have to be very short. That's fine. And then we'll request special guest Justice Tivatia to provide his brief thoughts, and then the chairman's comments. So that's a plan for lunch. Lunch we will break definitely at 12:30, though we started late because not only we should maintain time, but also Mr. Ruchanda has to actually go somewhere else for another conference. Let me introduce this conference very quickly to you. First of all, this is a lovely facility. Welcome to this facility. In this quiet spot next to the Jamna. This was at one time a very beautiful place, I'm sure, and we'll make it beautiful once again.
Clean up the Jamna.
Clean up the Jamna, that's one of our jobs. So who's attending this conference? There are senior officials, academics definitely here, business executives. There were many who had confirmed, so I'm just using their profile, but they're not here. They may come later. The young leaders from all over India, they've come from Freedom Team, Center for Civil Society, etc. And there were a lot of ordinary citizens I had invited. I wanted to bring the ordinary citizen into the picture rather than having a bureaucratic, governance reform conference, and bureaucrats are not really interested. So I wanted the wave to catch on with the common persons, the average person. Those who have managed to come here are really, really the hard, determined people. So you have come here to a special place. You are really determined to change India. So thank you for that, despite short notice, and so thank you for making the effort. We'll have obviously much more interaction after lunch. Before lunch is going to be mainly short talks, and then we'll have question and answers and other things after lunch. The objective of this conference is what? What exactly are the frameworks that India needs? The governance frameworks. Because the governance frameworks themselves are fundamentally flawed, as I will argue and talk about shortly. And those frameworks, once we need to identify them, and thereafter we'll drill down into these frameworks and work out how can we actually implement them. We'll prepare a plan for implementation, what I call a strategic plan. And we'll also look at some of the detailed policies, but not many. We won't have time for that. So the framing of this thing is, this conference, each time you think about what you're here for, imagine, I always like this experiment that everyone complains, something's wrong in India. Well, that's a good thing. You know that something's wrong. This is a starting point. This is not the end point. Now what will you do? So the best way is to say, if you are a Prime Minister of India, what exactly will you do? And no, there will be no question. I'm sorry, Anuj. At this point in time, we will take no questions till lunch. Thank you. Basically, what we have been doing so far is doing the same thing over and over again for 65 years. And we need to change that. We have a colonial bureaucracy, we have a colonial law system. We have not bothered to change it as the world advances in terms of theory and practice. We are essentially insane. Honestly, that's what Einstein would have said, and that's what Chanakya would have said. We have not done the right thing as sensible people would do. So we need to really think at a very high level, and we need to think of fundamental change. That's what this conference is all about. And I'll come very quickly to this. Is about the system. The focus on the system. We need to think about incentives. We need to think about how we can tie up. India was very well governed in the past. Let me assure you, if you go back in India's history, there were sufficient points in time in India's history when India was the world's wealthiest country, and it was definitely well deserved. It was not a random event Nothing happens randomly in the world. When people become wealthy, there is a good reason why they did it. So that is what we are going back and forth. We're scanning the whole world. We're scanning our own Indian literature. We're scanning the rest of the world, and we're talking about what are the two basic things that we need to do, and we'll come to that as the thing progresses. Essentially, we're talking systems. This is Vyavastha Parivartan, as they say, system reform. And as I mentioned, just we will adopt the best ideas from all over the world. I will quickly skip this point. That's well known. We should. Just a brief point. Let me just mention this quickly, because India has had this thing about economic reforms. But economic reforms are really one part of the whole story. So there was a period in the 70s and 80s when the world was coming out of the Keynesian era. There was a lot of Keynesian socialist era, policies in the 60s and all over the world, not just India. And in that period with Thatcher, etc., there was a change, and so we're talking a lot about deregulation, a lot about liberalization. The whole world was doing it simultaneously. Thereafter, by the way, so India caught that wave as usual 10 years later. We caught it in the 1990s. But let me tell you about this slightly different thing, the new public management system, the theories of modern governance, and those theories were actually being evolved, they were evolving in the 90s. So what I'm talking to you is now going to be 1990s. And India has not yet even considered that, leave alone adopted. So this was implemented in the 1990s with Osborne's book, New Zealand, Canada, etc. They were leading in this particular area, and let me assure you that was phenomenally important. Governance reforms is as important as economic reforms, and we have, by the way, in my view, adopted neither. Although we say we have done some liberalization, we have actually not done much. So in the broad structure of this day, let me not go through this. This has already been done. Please wear your ID card, that's all clear. We will go for lunch, etc. We'll get tea and other things. Freedom Team of India members out there, they're going to help you. I will not introduce them now, we'll introduce them after the lunch. We'll use only English in this conference. Obviously there are people who are more comfortable in Hindi. We all can speak our mother tongue language. Tea and lunch, please feel free. I'm perfectly comfortable with Hindi, and many of our members in FT are comfortable with other languages. We will all talk about these particular issues in different languages. But at the conference, let's speak English. These slides will be uploaded on our website in the India Policy Institute and FTI, and we'll have hopefully a good strategic plan developed regardless of the number of people. Let me assure you that it doesn't take more than 10 people to reform India, and there are more than 10 people. So if we are clear about that we are not underwhelmed, let's say. I'm not underwhelmed at all by the fact that some people haven't come. It's their loss, not ours. And therefore, I hand over to Shri Kuchal Das.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanjeev. And I'm certainly honored to be here, and also happy to see many friendly faces, people I have known for some time. And I've always been a fan of Sanjeev Sablok, and frankly I heartily support this work. Nothing could be more important at this moment than to bring awareness of these ideas into our public space, and secondly to mobilize people on behalf of these ideas. So, I have written this book, India Grows at Night. I don't complete the sentence, the full sentence.
There's something going on here, I suppose. They have given me some mic. Sorry about that.
Why don't we just shut it off?
I know, I'm not just...
Okay. Okay. So, the full sentence is, India grows at night when the government sleeps. And I make a liberal case for a strong state. The basic issue today in India is that prosperity is spreading across the country, but it is spreading amidst the most appalling governance. And so what we need, as Sanjeev said, are not only economic reforms, but really governance reforms. And what really the anguish we all feel as citizens is that why should it take us 15 years to get justice? Why should it take 12 years to build a road which takes 3 years anywhere else? Why should 1 out of 4 school teachers in a government primary school be absent? And 1 out of 2 who is present are not teaching? Why are 1 in 4 members of the Lok Sabha with criminal backgrounds? Why does it take an ordinary person, a farmer, or you and I, why do we have to pay a bribe to change the title on our property when our father dies? Everybody has to suffer that humiliation. So, these are really the issues of governance. And what we require is what I call a strong liberal state. What is a strong liberal state? It has 3 pillars. 1, it has, excuse me, sir, could you, because I want to face people as I'm talking. What is a strong liberal state has 3 pillars. And this, but don't get put off by the word strong. It's not Stalin's Russia or Hitler's Germany or Mao's China that I'm talking about, not even benign Singapore. We're talking about the classical liberal state as conceived by our founding fathers in India, as well as the American founding fathers, who were the first to put forth. That was the first modern state. The first liberal modern state was the American state. So the modern liberal state has 3 pillars. 1, it has an executive that is capable of quick, decisive, determined action when required. 2, that action is bound by the rule of law. And 3, that action is accountable to the people. Now, it's not easy to create such a state because the 3 pillars, unlike the pillars in this building, which reinforce each other, these 3 pillars sometimes undermine each other. And what has been happening actually to some extent is that an excess of a demand for accountability has undermined the capacity of the state. So a lot of the work we need to do, really, and this is the fault of the discipline of political science. For 100 years, 90% of the scholarship has been about accountability and very little about state capacity. And when we talk about these reforms, we're talking about state capacity. So how will we get this strong liberal state to come about? 1, yes, if we were lucky, we could have a strong leader who is also a reformer. And we've had a strong leader in our past. We had Indira Gandhi. But Indira Gandhi was not an institution builder. We have had, and besides, in a democracy, you cannot guarantee that you will get such a leader. But it has happened. There have been moments, and in fact, this is the right time to bring it, that Margaret Thatcher died earlier this week, and there have been a lot of reporting about her legacy. And clearly, a lot of that, Margaret Thatcher transformed the governance of England and inspired governance people around the world to do the same. And so we could be lucky and get somebody like Margaret Thatcher. And some people today are asking whether Narendra Modi is going to be our Margaret Thatcher, and whether he is going to be our Margaret Thatcher or not. But the fact that he is talking the language of reform, of governance reform. The other day he said, we want small government but big governance. And that language is the classical language of the liberal right and what we need today. Now, the reason why I think this conference is come at the right time is that I believe we are close to our Margaret Thatcher moment. And the reason for that, could you just be still a little bit? Because as a speaker, at least I get disturbed when people are wandering around and offering chai and help to others.
To stop the noise.
Okay. So, thank you, but I'll just take another 3-4 minutes. I'm coming to the end. And my point is, why are we at our Margaret Thatcher moment in our history? And the main reason is that a new middle class has come up in the country after 1991. The middle class in India was only 2% in 1950, only 8% in 1980. But today it is between 25 and 30%, depending on how you define it. And in a decade, it will be 50% of our country. So clearly the politics are about to change. And 2014 is a very important election because it will reflect this change, and suddenly people have begun to realize it. The new middle class got its first taste of success with the movement on behalf of Jessica Lal's murder. And then 3 other quick ones, Priyadarshini, Ruchika Girotra, and suddenly they found, then with the anti-corruption movement of Anna Hazare, they got energized. They're using social media as a very powerful tool for mobilizing. And then it was followed by Nirbhaya, the Aam Aadmi Party. So all these are a function of a strong, now a voice that the new middle class has got. And I think our politics are not going to be. But this new middle class has no one to vote for. Because every single party treats the voter as a victim rather than an aspirant. And this new middle class is aspiring. And so the Congress says to the voter, oh, you poor fellow, you lost out in liberalization, globalization. So we have to give you free power, we have to give you a Nariga job, we have to give you subsidized rice, we have to give you this, we have to give you that. And there are 100 centrally sponsored schemes which they have created. The BJP says, oh, you poor fellow, you are a victim of 1,000 years of Muslim rule. So we have to do something for you. The caste parties, the Dalit parties, OBC parties, they say, oh, you're a victim of upper caste oppression. So everybody treats you as a victim when the new middle class is aspiring. The person who got the 900 millionth cell phone, he was not a victim. He was an aspirer. And so are politics of aspiration. And you can see, right now Modi is having a big impact because he's giving the language is a language of aspiration. And so I feel the time has come for a new liberal party. Now either one of the existing parties can occupy that empty space, which is right of center. Say a Narendra Modi, so far the jury is out. Whether he can actually occupy that space, whether he can broaden his appeal, we don't know. But certainly for the sake of the country right now, he's serving a good purpose because he's bringing the reform agenda on the front page every day. And so I guess our challenge now, the need for a new liberal party is what Sanjeev's whole movement is about. The job we have to do, Sanjeev, is also to find and create an umbrella for lots of other smaller liberal movements of people who are thinking in the same way to come together. We have to convert people who are thinkers into doers. That's the problem with partly in India we have a bias for thought and bias against action. So we have to become mobilizers. And in my book I talk about the responsibility of every citizen to devote 1 hour a week to his neighborhood. And some of you are doing that. And that 1 hour, and that inspiration for that 1 hour a week comes from the greatest thinker about democracy in modern times, a Frenchman named Alexis de Tocqueville, who visited America and discovered the genius of why America had become the first democracy, modern democracy. So one is this 1 hour a week that we must all devote, and this I hope will be also the motto of our party. But also, I would say we have to find the moral core. We have to appeal to the moral core of the average Indian. Now, unfortunately, no one translated the language of the Constitution into the language of the people. So people believe that the Constitution kind of fell from the heaven in 1947, and they have never really identified. One of the problems about the rule of law is people have not identified with the rule of law. And so I would suggest the last person who tried to do this was Mahatma Gandhi during the freedom struggle when he was fighting untouchability. He fought it with the language of dharma. He fought it with the language of sadharan dharma. The way Buddha also did, Ashoka and Buddha used the same language when they were mobilizing people. So I think to translate the Constitution into the language that people relate to would be another challenge for this party, so that it's not conceived of, unlike the Swatantra Party suffered the same. They had great people. We were talking just now about Rajaji and Minu Masani and these wonderful people of the Swatantra Party, but they also failed to translate these ideals into the... So we need to do that. Anyway, I'm not going to take more time. But just to say that I think that our Margaret Thatcher moment has arrived. It has arrived. The time is right. And the Swatantra Party was too early. It was the wrong time. We were living in a socialist age. But now a whole generation has come up after 91 who, these people's, their minds are liberated. They don't have the socialist baggage in their minds. They have risen on the back of their own hard work. And they see the gap between their hard work and their life and on the other side of people who are giving us governance, who are often corrupt, who are all the things that Sanjeev has talked about. So again, thank you very much for giving me this chance to speak to you, and I remain a strong supporter of this cause. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vishwan Das. It's an excellent introduction to the evolution that has occurred in India's social and economic and even political frameworks over the last 60 years. So we are at the moment in a kind of at a cusp of change. Let me just add here that this was, we are not discussing any party here, just to clarify since there was a mention. This is a purely technical governance reforms conference, and I will be now introducing people to the technical side of this conference. So therefore the idea would be that we today prepare for the opportunity if it ever comes, whether this party, that party. To me, as far as I'm concerned, the results matter more than the names and the parties and whether liberal or not liberal. So long as the good ideas get in, let us do it. So I will now rush through basically a very long presentation which I have. I'll upload the slides on the internet. You can have a look at that. But I will take. When is the tea expected? So I know when to stop. Can you give me a rough idea?
I'm ready.
Is the tea ready?
Yeah.
Let us have tea then, and let me then talk for 45 minutes after that. That'll be very nice. So we take a break for tea. Thank you. And we come back in 10 minutes, please. Let us come back because we have started late, let us try to get back time. So you can bring your cups back and let us start in 10 minutes flat. Thank you. So 10 past 11 from this clock we will start.
10 past 11. Okay.
Yeah, let's have a. Oh wait, this is still going on. What is this? USA in economics. I taught at the National Academy, for example, in Missouri. I resigned in 2001 after realizing that it's simply not possible. I obviously had access to the Planning Commission Secretary, the Finance Secretaries, and everybody in Prime Minister office. People like Ashok Sakia who are unfortunately passed away. But the reality is that with all the access that you get in the IS, you still can do absolutely nothing. And the answer is and why can't you do it? Because the politicians don't allow it. So when it was very clear that I'm wasting my time, I mean, इतना time नहीं होता है कि बस अपना time लगे रहो भिखारियों की तरह भैया आप हमारा कर दो, हम खुद बन जाते हैं politician. I said this is all end of it. I'm going to lead the country and we will all lead the country together because it is not possible to keep begging these guys for कि हमारा करो. हम भिखारी हैं क्या? हम तो भी चाहते हैं reform. Sorry, I should speak in English.
That's okay, that's okay.
Okay. So 15 years. Since then, not resigned in 2001. I started some work before that. India Policy Institute, which is hosting it, had started it based on my work. Then I started. I became a national executive member of the Bharat party, which was the successor literacy of the Swatan party. That didn't really go very far. Started the Freedom Team of India, which is basically the core team that is organizing this event and many other events which are happening across India. Wrote a book, Breaking Free of Nehru. I'll just show you this picture. And organized a Reform Summit recently for 4 days where we organized